What's up, everybody, and welcome to Rappin with ReefBum. I'm your host, Keith Berkelhamer, and every episode I have a guest from the reef keeping community. And for this episode, I have Kenny Lin from Pieces of the Ocean, and I'm just adjusting his picture here on the live stream. Kenny, welcome to the show.
How you doing, Keith? Thank you for having me, Keith. I'm so glad I got to catch up again. You know, I think we were just saying how the hobby, right?
Yeah, you know, we were just we were talking
10 years.
Go ahead.
Yeah, like over I think 10 years. You've been in the hobby longer than I have, right? I think I started in 2008, 2009. And I remember buying my first few SPS frags from you. You had at that time you had a thriving SPS reef, I remember. And I bought it from you on what? Manhattan Reefs?
Yeah.
MR?
Yeah, the Manhattan Reefs frag swap.
Yeah.
No, you probably are talking about my old 225-gallon tank, that the SPS dominant tank, and that thing was just chock full of SPS. So those frag swaps were great. You know, you meet like a lot of people like yourself, and it's great in terms of like trading, selling, or just talking to people.
Yeah, definitely allows a venue for everyone to meet each other. Trade was big back then, you know, and buying and selling as well. It's great, yeah.
Yeah, so you were a hobbyist back then, and we're gonna get into Pieces of the Ocean, POTO. Do you call it POTO or POTO?
People call it POTO.
POTO. Yeah.
Yeah, POTO.
So yeah, no, Kenny was a big time hobbyist and was you know, just had some kicking tanks and whatnot, and then he turned pro, you know, after
I wouldn't say pro.
Wouldn't say pro.
I tell everybody we are all students of the game. We learn something new every day. Yeah, I'm still learning every day. Just learn something new. That's the great thing about the hobby. You know, you never stop learning.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. You're always learning, and that's the beauty of it. Yeah. But I don't know, Kenny. So tell us how you got into the hobby. You know, how did you get involved in reef keeping?
I mean, before reef keeping, I had kept other, you know, animals. I like animals. I had a freshwater tank, had a 90-gallon freshwater tank. I was going to do cichlids, freshwater cichlids. But then as I started to do some research, I wanted to do like different backgrounds, 3D backgrounds, and things started to get expensive. And then I looked into saltwater. I'm like, well, for a little bit more, I could actually do saltwater. And I'm always like, you know, the kind of person that do things the hard way. What's harder, saltwater or cichlid? Saltwater. Let's do that. So that's how I started. Because I just came upon a 90-gallon that was someone's giving away a friend of mine. So you know, there you go, free tank. That's a big portion of the cost right there already. So I just dive right in. You know, MR was my first forum, and you know, read a lot about reef keeping and just started reading. You know, started reading a lot. You know, and started meeting people, talking to people. Starting doing those runs. I'm sure a lot of reefers do, like late night runs to pick up live rock, late night run to pick up used equipment, you know, and just get your stuff together, and you know, there's your first reef. Yeah, that was back in 2008, 2009. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of got hooked into reef keeping. The first thing I started doing was keeping planted freshwater aquariums, and those are challenging. You know, they're really cool.
I heard, yeah.
But I never had cichlids. I never went down that path. But yeah, keeping a planted tank was hard. I used to really put a lot of tetras in there, and I like the natural look and feel of the planted tank, and that's kind of like how I got hooked into saltwater reef tanks. That was like the next logical step up, I thought, in terms of a planted tank. But
yeah, planted tank is huge right now too. I heard a couple customers. They told us it's almost like keeping SPS. You know. There's a balance that you gotta keep, and I don't know much about planted tanks, but from what I hear, it's pretty huge.
Yeah, I think you got to use CO2 to keep for the plants to keep them thriving, and you're right though. I think it's a pretty involved you know, part in terms of
very hands-on, just like reef keeping.
Yeah. Sorry, man. You were a hobbyist and what have you. You got interested in reef keeping, and then you decided to you know, take a next step and turn it into a business. So talk to us, Kenny, about how you know you made the transition from hobbyist to a business person. Even though I'm sure you are still a true hobbyist at heart, as you would say, probably, right?
Yes, every day we have to remind each other, don't be a hobbyist. It's one of the common things to say, because we always like to hoard the best thing, the nicest coral. We like to hoard for ourselves, but if you do that, you don't pay any bills. So, but going back to your question, it's not something that happened like overnight from hobbyist to business owner. I would say it happened over a course of years, because I had actually, when I was a hobbyist, like everyone else, I was just spending a lot of money buying corals, and I had to recoup some of my cost, you know, of all the money I spent in reefing. So I started selling frags, and slowly started thinking about the business aspect of it. Like, okay, you know, I see other people turn into turn a hobby into a business. But at that time it was hard, because I had a good job. I had a day job that paid well, and you know, I saw that even though people are selling frags, but doesn't mean, you know, there's money to be made. I didn't feel like at that time there's money to be made. But I just kept selling frags to make my money back for the money I spent in the addiction. But slowly, as I went along, I think a lot of it had to do with my personality. My wife says I'm very extreme, because anything I want to do, I like to figure out like how far I can take it. You know? So at the end of the day, I started thinking, you know, as I started to, my job wasn't, you know, I didn't feel like this type of satisfaction from my job anymore at that time, and started to look for another way, maybe try this thing out. But it was difficult because, as you know, the hobby is a very high overhead, high labor intensive, and especially when we're dealing with delicate livestock. And it cannot be more delicate than what we're dealing with, you know, live corals. And knowing that, it was hard for me to really make it like go all the way. But things just started to happen. As I started selling more corals, I started to sell more fish, and looking for the next step. I got an opportunity to move when I had my first child. I moved back to my old house, and I saw the basement as an opportunity to expand the operation at that time. So I built out a basement. I actually spent my first month on my paternity leave from my job on building out a basement. And that's when things got really serious. And so then I told myself, if I'm going to do this, I have to have something to show for it. I can't be in the basement forever. So I started to talk to people, and at that time I knew I wouldn't be able to do it by myself. Like, one of the things that I recognized right from the beginning is that I needed somebody just as passionate as I was to do this together. So and then I met William. William was a customer of mine at the time, buying frags.
And he's watching right now, by the way.
He's watching right now. Yes. Yeah, William was supposed to join us, but he wasn't feeling well, so he stayed in.
So William is your business partner. You're the founder and CEO of Pieces of the Ocean, right? And William is the president and COO.
So both William and I are both hobbyists. I mean, that's first and foremost. You have to be hobbyists at heart. We're passionate. We love this thing as much as the next guy. But I think what I recognized in William was that his background is in accounting, right? So I knew I needed somebody with a bit of a business sense, and numbers, knows numbers, to really make it happen. And plus, he's a hobbyist, so I think to be a hobbyist to understand how the business goes. So he was just as driven as I was through talking to each other. He had a dream of owning a fish store one day, and I had a dream. Basically, I want to take it to the next level. So it just worked out well between us, and so next thing you know, here we are. We'll found some help, and just through hard work. I think I cannot overstate the fact that it took a lot of hard work. Just imagine taking care of one tank, but you had to build out a store, and then we did it all by ourselves. So it took a lot of hard work and determination. And finally, we have this little, not a big store. It's about 1,000 square footage, not big. And here we are building. We continue to add more tanks to the store because we do recognize. I mean, of all the things happening in the world right now, with the Indo ban, with not just the Indo ban, but all these bans, people are just like trying to scrutinize the hobby of what we're doing. We really have to focus on growing corals more than ever. That's how William and I feel. And that's the only future for the hobby. We have to grow our coral. That's why we're investing a lot of resources into growing corals right now, and just to future-proof ourselves in case of any sort of world events that are going to come up again. With the virus, I'm sure a lot of you guys know that we can't even get fish in right now. I was in Newark last week picking up a box of not fish, corals, and they told me there's three flights into the airport that day, more than they had the day before. That was in Newark, in New York, tri-state. So it's just, the future is not predictable, and we just try to future-proof ourselves.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that is right on point. When I first started the hobby 25 plus years ago, I'm an old timer here, but it was all, in terms of SPS, brought in wild pieces, and you started a reef tank not with frags. You started with pretty much wild colonies or larger mariculture colonies, and really it wasn't about the aquaculture wasn't big back then, but then it started to change. And there's a it's a great thing that it has changed that way, because it protects the oceans and the reefs and all that sort of thing. And there are some operations out there that you know, culture and raise corals, you know, in the ocean, and that's great, and that's sustainable, and you're not you know, impacting the actual you know, live reefs that way. But this is where this hobby has been at the last few years, and that's where it's going to have to go down the road in the future. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's only natural, especially you said you came from 25 years ago, right? It's a lot harder to grow corals. You got, I think the technology has advanced so fast and so much. There's no better time for us to really look into growing corals now. I mean, you were one of the exceptions, but I'm pretty sure back then there was not that many people that could grow corals on a large scale in a confined, captive environment, in a captive tank, in a glass tank. Let me just be specific, in a glass tank. So, but then right now, you know, the technology is there, and with the LED, you know, which has now been proven to grow corals. I think that was a huge debate years back, and now there's no debate anymore. You know, and everything is at our disposal, and then the cost is going down. Despite what people think, I think the cost to acquire the equipment to grow corals, I think, has gone down, because the options is a lot more. You know, you have more options, so you can really pick and choose what you want to go with. And
so Kenny, you shot some video. You gave you passed along a video as a video tour of your store. So let's roll that, and then come back and we'll talk about it. But it kind of gives a really good perspective in terms of what you got going on down there, right at Pieces of the Ocean. So let me go ahead and run that, and then I'll come back.
Guys, welcome to Staten Island. My name is Kenny. I'm here to give you a tour of our store at Pieces of the Ocean. And let's come inside. We're currently closed due to the virus, but we are shipping, as you guys, well, a lot of you guys know. So a little bit of a COVID-19 update here. But here it is. This is our store. This is the front display tank. And then here's the fish tank. Put a lot of big fish in here. Not that many fish right now. As you guys know, flights are not coming in, so it's hard to get fish in. But we do have a couple of wrasses, lineatus, a bowdy swimming somewhere, and a nice lineatus here. And this is our display tank. All right. Let me put on the filter so you can see better. This tank we run G5, Radion G5s, and about almost a year and a half old. Originally intended to be a mixed reef, but as you well know, I'm an aqua SPS type of guy, and SPS started doing really well in this tank and slowly converted to SPS. So I was doing really well with the G4 for over a year of this tank, and then G5 came out, and we love the coverage, extra coverage on the G5. But I like lights. The SPS like lights, so we added 2 more T5s on the side to give it some additional light on the side when the corals start to grow out a little more. All right, come around here. Here's our Elos. Runs a G4 hybrid from Aquatic Life. And just show you a little bit the boxes. We ship a lot, like I said, but we're not open to the public now. There's a 120 gallon Reef Ready. We just set up running 2 G4, Radion G4. All right. And here's a little freezer. And here's the other side of the display. And for pumps, we have 2 gyros on this side and 2 MP40 on the other side. And that's what we have to flow. And we run a Vector L1 for return. And we use the hydro wave engine from Coral View to control all 4 of our pumps. So all four of these pumps, despite that they're from different companies, they all controlled by one controller. So that's pretty cool. The skimmer, the Vertex Alpha 250, and an algae scrubber, and algae calcium reactor. So pretty basic stuff. And come around, there's our fish systems. Not that many fish. Again, like I said, we do have some clownfish, some storms, orange storms, snowstorm, and a little blue slot jawfish, and some inverts. And this side, and this is our main grow out systems, SPS. SPS, and in the middle is the bandsaw. We work on the bandsaw, calcium reactor. In between each tubs we have a bandsaw, so it's easier for the guys here to make frags and work. And this is the LPS and ZOA system. And this is another LPS and ZOA system. These two systems are connected, and then everything else is by themselves. So the SPS systems are all by themselves, independent, and these two systems are connected. And then here's the receiving tank. All the new corals, when they get here, they sit here. All right. They get observed, they get dipped. Depending on the type of corals, they stay here longer or shorter. Alright. So let's take a look back at the store. Oh yeah, all these systems are running G4, Radon G4, except the SPS system are running T5 ATI fixtures. And here's a lagoon. The lagoon is one of our everyone's favorite tanks here. Alright. A lot of high-end mushrooms and LPS, anemones, torch, and it runs a G5. Next to this is another tank. This is going to be a mixed reef. We don't know what it's going to be yet. We let the tank decide for themselves. We don't try to force it onto the system. All right, and this is the 30-gallon lagoon from Innovative Marine. A lot of softies in here. And our office is behind the window. And over here is a Red Sea Reefer 450. It's a fish system. We just recently decided to convert it to Reef also. Right. And this is the heart and bloodline of the store. Two RODI systems, one's 350 gallon per day, one's 400 gallon per day, and running simultaneously to feed the 200 gallon vat for RO. And then we use a mixing station, mixing pump to bring water over to the other side for salt water. And yep. Sorry, a little messy in the back of the store. Oh, forgot to mention, this is a hospital tank. So this hospital tank, we put all the sick fish in here, whatever fish we have that are sick, that are not doing well, we treat it. We treat it based on the disease. Just a hang on back, nothing too fancy. And here's a look back at our store. Thank you. I think that's it. All right. Thank you guys. Thank you for watching.
Annie, that was one hell of a tour.
All right.
Thank
you.
We got a few things to talk about there because that's a big grow out system you got. You got a lot of things going on there in terms of grow out, which is awesome. And we're also talking about the LED lighting and the Radions that you have. Basically, you've got Gen 4s and Gen 5s, right, that are lighting your systems.
Yes.
So talk about the transition that well, not the transition. Talk about your philosophy on lighting. Did you start out with the T5s and then go to LEDs? Was that how you kind of did the?
Yeah. So before the store opened, we were thinking about what lights to use, and we went with Radion for all the LPS and Zoas. We would have went with Radions for the SPS glow tub as well, but at that time, I think we were thinking in terms of cost.
Right.
T5 was, gave us the type of coverage that we needed without spending a fortune. But on the display tank, we used the G4 from the beginning, and then we just find that G4 was the ability for it to bring out colors is definitely greater, but the coverage is where it was lacking. I think LED in general always had a shortcoming that was coverage, but I think Radion Ecotech has been, especially with the G5. When we threw on the G5, the whole room got lit up. That's how much coverage that it started to give. But we still can't ignore the fact that the light source is still coming from the center, not coming from even like how T5 is throwing the light on the coral. But there's no denying that Radion can definitely grow corals in our experience and bring out crazy colors. I mean, before LED, after LED, we started to see a lot of crazy colors on a lot of these aquacorals. So yeah, I mean, there's no knocking. I mean, I tried it all. I tried metal halide. I in the basement I had metal halide and Kessels. Kessel group. I actually had 4 Kessels on a 4x4 tray.
Really?
And it was, 4 Kessels on a 4x4 tray. Only 4. And it was growing LPS, Zoas, coloring them up like nothing, on the SPS system, I switched between T5 and halide, and at the end of the day, I switched back to T5 because halide was just too hot. We were working there without a shirt on, and in the basement, it's just not working out. So, but hey, halide gave us great growth, But at the end of the day, we have to be comfortable working there.
So you switch from the G4s to the G5s. What have you noticed in terms of the performance of the G5s versus the G4s? What's your impression there?
Well, the first thing is spread and coverage. I mean, we had G4 on a 68 by 30-inch tank, the one behind me right here. It's a peninsula slide style. I would have 4 G4 on it, and it was covering the tank all right. I mean, there's no complaining there. But once we do the G5 on it, we could see growth from the sides of the tank that was not there before. And yeah, so I mean, I think the first thing people say, I think our first experience with the G5 was actually at Frag Farmers in Connecticut. We used that as a show light. And it was just tremendous, the amount of spread that it gave us. It was on the floor. The light is on the light spillage all the way onto the floor. So I think that's the biggest improvement from G4 to G5. At the end of the day, if it grows corals, then brings out colors, and that's what we care about.
So the other thing I noticed in all your tanks is that you have sand, right? In terms of the display behind you, and I think in a lot of the tanks in your shop, you have sand, and it also looked like you had a lot of dry rock that you had started with those tanks, right?
Yeah. So we start off all the rock. We start off with all dry rock. So that's why a lot of systems actually took a little longer than usual to mature. And we added sand because sand, in itself, sand is like a substrate. Like live rock is a substrate for bacteria. So, in our experience, having sand in the system just makes the systems a lot more stable. less prone to issues. You know, you say, especially when you have a new tank, it's going to take a lot longer for the tank to cycle without sand. That's just in our experience, you know, because, you know, again, sand in itself can harbor a lot of bacteria. You know, that's why we have sand. Also, it looks good, looks great, you know, looks more natural. The only system that we don't have sand in is the ELO system. But we plan to have that tank start out as SPS tank. We knew it was going to be an SPS tank. So let's just give it tons of flow and no sand. But it never turned out the way we want to. We learned to let the system become what it wants to become. You know, if it wants to be an SPS reef, then let it be SPS reef. If it wants to be a mixed reef, we just watch how the corals respond to the system. Every system is different, even though it's taken care of by the same people. You know, getting the same exact water chain. You know, getting the same type of parameters. At the end of the day, stuff still go out of whack. You know, deviate. So we have to let the system come to us what they want to be.
So, in terms of starting the tank with dry rock, what do you do in terms of? So, let's say you have a customer that comes in and they want to start a reef tank, and you know, by and large, it's very difficult to find live rock out there, right? To seed a tank. That most of the tanks out there now you start with dry rock. And, you know, so with the dry rock, you have the lack of biodiversity, right? And you need to seed it with some sort of product to start the whole cycle process. And it's different, right? So when you start a tank with dry rock, it can take a little bit longer to get going with it versus starting a tank with live rock. And, you know, my one experience starting a tank with dry rock was that, you know, I kind of had one problem after another with you know, bacterial bloom, diatoms, dinos. I mean, you name it, man. It was like one thing after another. And eventually I just rebooted my tank because it was just really stressing out the corals. So what do you say to people when they start a tank off with dry rock, and what's your advice there?
Get ready for a long haul.
Yeah.
Like, funny you mentioned that. I think we're not the only one. I mean, you're not the only one with the issue. We had the same issue here when we first started the store. We started all with dry rock. Like you said, live rock is very hard to come by. Even if you do come by that, people don't buy live rock because people are just, you know, afraid of pests. They just want to start with a clean slate on the system. So, you know, we started with dry rock, and like you said, it was sterile. You know, there was no bacteria. It took a long time for the bacteria population to develop. So no matter how we dose the bacteria, you know, all the products on the market, at the end of the day, what helped us was by taking an established live rock from another reefer, from a private guy that has a very old established tank, you know, and we added those live rocks into the system, and that's when we started to see improvement. I do want to say that that's what we observed, but I wouldn't go as far as saying that is what the case is, because, you know, unless we go into take a microscope and look down into the water and see what was going on. But generally, that's been our experience. You know, I think I spoke to when we were having issue with our system over here, the ELO system. I actually emailed Mike Paletta. A lot of guys probably know Mike Paletta. He's pretty active in the reef hobby, and because I remember him saying in one of his videos saying that he had the same issue with having dry rock, and he couldn't keep SPS. You know, we were having the same issue. Like 6 months after 6 months, you know, we couldn't get any. I think at the end of the day, the system was not stable. Nutrient was not stable. You understand, trace element has to correlate with nutrient. So when your nutrient level is not stable, doesn't matter how you change that number, how you get things stabilized, your phosphate is going up and down, your nitrate is going up and down, and your alkalinity naturally be going up and down. And system was not stable. So I talked to Michael and he said, yeah. But then what he did was he picked 2 rocks from his other system that has been running for a long time and put it in his system. And that kind of helped turning things around. And that's what I did. You know, we start calling our customers, friends, do you have any spare live rock that that are clean and that we can use? So yeah, that's what we did, and that's when things started to improve.
Yeah, I actually have some live rock in my leftover from my frag tank that I took out, and I've got it in a Rubbermaid right now with a power head, and I'm just keeping it alive in that Rubbermaid because I want to potentially start another tank, and I'd like to have that rock to seed that new tank.
Make sure you feed that tank too. Don't just leave it running.
What's that?
Because eventually, make sure you feed that tank too.
Yes.
Yeah, gotta have waste in there for the bacteria to continue to grow. Because at the end of the day, if there's nothing producing waste, I think the bacteria would take time to develop again down the road. But if you feed a tank consistently, even if you drive up the phosphate and nitrate, that's all right. But eventually, your bacteria will consume those type of nutrients, assuming that you have nutrient.
Yeah. So everybody, I want to apologize. There seems to be some problems we're having on YouTube. I believe the live stream is still going, but I can't get in to see any comments. So if you have any questions, you certainly leave comments in the the video, and we'll try to answer them after the show. But I think we're still on. I think I can't see anything in terms of what's on YouTube, but it seems like we have some folks that are watching here. But Kenny, let's also talk about some of the other stuff in the video and what you believe in terms of keeping coral and specifically SPS. You use calcium reactors. Have you a reason why you use a calcium reactor versus two-part? Is it just more economical for you to have a calcium reactor at the store?
Yeah, it's just for the size of the system and the demand that we have. In the beginning, we ran a calcium reactor, but we did not drive CO2 through the chamber. And then we slowly ramped up the gas as we start to see consumption. We see calcium reactor as just an oversized doser, on steroid. On steroid. It's constantly dosing 24 hours a day. But that's only because we have larger system with larger consumption. You have a small tank with small consumption. Calcium reactor at the end of the day still keeps things stable. Even you can control, you can dose as little as you want by dialing down by controlling the gas, CO2 gas, and the flow rate. Or you can, dose as much as you want on a larger system. Every single system that we have here runs on calcium reactor. Except for a new system, we run two parts until the consumption starts to creep up. Then we throw a reactor on it.
Yeah. No, I've used both. I've used the calcium reactor, and it's great because you can set it and forget it, and it's pretty cheap. You're just basically spending money on the media that you're putting.
Which reactor are you using?
So I'm not using it currently, but remember those old MTC ProCal calcium reactors?
Yeah.
Those were real
workhorse.
Yeah, Marine Technical Concepts. I don't think that company's around anymore, but that was like the go-to calcium reactor for a lot of folks in our area, in the tri-state area. The guy was out in New Jersey, and that thing was just kick butt, and I loved using it. But for the past few years, I've been using ESV two-part, and it's the great thing about using the two-part is you have a lot of control, so you can precisely dose the calcium and the alkalinity depending on what's going on with your system. And I like that fact that it could give you that much control, and you could really target levels much easier than versus using a calcium reactor. But I have no issues using a calcium reactor. Those things are tried and true, and you can just grow corals, and they can keep up with the demand. So yeah.
Especially with dosing pumps advanced in this day and age, you have the Versa, you have all these advanced high-tech dosing pumps these days. So I think that's why two-part is still very popular. In the store, we don't try to do things one-dimensional or just one way.
Oh, we lost Kenny for a second there.
He's
He's back.
Part, and all right.
Yeah, we lost you there for a second, Kenny. So I got our comment feedback here. We got a few people that are asking some questions here. Raul Mejia Jr. is saying, "What's up, Kenny and Will? Hope all is well and good." And
hey, Raul, what's up, man? Raul's one of our good customers. Yeah.
Ah, cool. We also have Waldy Reef. He's got a question about skimmer that's rated for 200 gallons, and his tank is only 130 gallons, and he has 15 fish, and he's wondering if his skimmer is, he thinks the skimmer's not skimming properly, and he thinks that it might be too big for his tank. This is something I've run into a lot myself, people asking me about what's, the right size skimmer for a tank, and it does depend on the bio load. So in terms of the fish, the corals don't necessarily add a lot to the bio load, but yeah, if you have an oversized skimmer for a tank, then it's going to skim inconsistently and not work optimally, and that actually happened to me. So I had to downsize my skimmer to get better performance out of that. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Have you run into that before?
Speaking from experience, I used to tell the customers, always go for the bigger skimmer, oversize it, because most people tend to, at least the customers I've spoken to, most people tend to overfeed, and most people like to, the reality is a lot of customers, they like to put as many fish as they can possibly put in the tank. So then that's why I tell them, you know what, just to prepare, your future bio load, you should get a skimmer that as big as you can go, you don't have to worry about it later. Oh, is my skimmer undersized? But I think each system is different. I can't stress it enough. Even though you have a 200 gallon here, a 200 gallon there, even if you have the exact same amount of live rock, exact same amount of fish, no matter how hard you try to emulate the two tanks, at the end of the day, something's gonna deviate, and because how sometimes like when you take out live rock and you get a diatom outbreak, cyano outbreak. So when you do that, the balance of the tank is off, and then the skimmer is there to help pick up the slack. That's why I say always try to oversize, but that's not always the case. Like when you see your skimmer is not skimming well, after I'm sure you check everything is running the air hose.
Oh, we lost Kenny again.
Your system is, your routine of maintenance, your routine of taking care of this tank renders this tank a lower nutrient than another tank, even though it has the same spec. But just because the way your lifestyle is, just the way you feed the tank, and just the way you treat the tank, just the way you do water change, all these different things contribute to the amount of nutrient that this tank produces, which in turn will affect how your skimmer will operate. So it's a long answer, like you can't really tell until you actually experience that, oh, it's too much, it's too big, or it's too small. But once you recognize it, make the adjustment, and your system should benefit from that.
So, Kenny, in terms of talking about nutrients, what do you like to run your systems, the SPS dominant systems at in terms of nitrates and phosphates? What levels do you try to shoot for?
Yeah, so we have mainly two thriving systems here for SPS, and they cannot be any more different. One is a display tank in the back. It run at its highest. It had PO phosphate above 1 at its highest, and the other system it hovers about 0.03, 0.06. They're both doing really well. One of them, the alkalinity is relatively lower. The lower nutrient on 0.03, we keep it at 7.5 alkalinity. And the one behind me with the higher nutrient, we keep it around 9 for alkalinity. And they're both doing well. There's no algae in the tank. And honestly, we can not explain scientifically or why that is. But we just know that they.
Yep. We
In my personal opinion, phosphate is actually overrated. Nitrate is overrated. You need some of that in your system. Stability is what is going to drive the key to success. I think.
Yeah, that is a big important point to bring up, is stability, because if you start getting variability in anything, but especially alkalinity, right? I mean, you want to keep that rock solid. So as soon as that starts like moving around, then the corals will let you know that they're not happy. But that's always a key in terms of the calcium, the alkalinity, the magnesium, nitrates, phosphates. Just corals do not like a lot of change quickly.
They don't. Imagine them being in this ocean for millions of years. They have evolved into such a long time. They definitely don't like that kind of change. And one thing I do want to add is people think I think people think that the ocean that corals come from are very clean and pristine, and that's actually not true. The indoor corals, right? A lot of mariculture indoor corals that we receive, right? They're actually covered in algae. All right. So when I receive those corals in, there's no way we could sell those corals. Nobody would buy those corals. Back in, I would say when indoor was like open, everything was coming through, and they were covered in algae. Then I started taking pictures. Looking at pictures of the supplier, what they sent me, in the ocean where they culture these corals, it's covered in algae. And then you see the Profilux colorful pink coral in the middle of a grassland. I think that's how much algae there is in the ocean. So I think one thing is that a lot of times people have a tendency to keep their tank try to keep their tank too clean, and ignoring the fact that I don't think a lot of people talk about that a lot. Like, the ocean is not as pristine as we think where these corals come from, and they're actually very adaptable to changes too. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, listen, Kenny, man, I don't want to keep you any longer. I really, really appreciate you being a guest on the show. Do you have any final thoughts for any folks out there?
Well, first of all, thank you, Keith, for having me. Appreciate it, and thank you for allowing me to show people the store. And for those who are fortunate enough to still enjoy the hobby, please continue to enjoy the hobby, grow corals. That's what we're trying to do, and stay safe. And we actually have an auction going on tonight. Don't mind me plugging my auction.
No, go for it, man.
Yeah. I don't know what time it's going to start, but it's going to start later tonight. But I look forward to any questions. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, shoot us an email, visit our website. And thank you, Keith. Appreciate having me on. And thank you, everybody.
Yeah, Kenny, man, thanks again so much. It was awesome to talk to you, and hopefully I'll see you sooner rather than later. I mean, I know they postponed Reefapalooza in New Jersey in June till December, but hopefully we'll see you sooner than that. But anyway, I just wanted to thank Kenny Lin here for being my guest, and please tune in next Thursday at 7 p.m. for another episode of Rappin' with ReefBum. Until then, take it easy.